let's talk a little bit about the history of serverless and like what has happened in the past to get us where we are today. So I think one of the really key technologies is virtual servers, and these were actually developed in the 70s by IBM, but it wasn't until the 2000s that they became popular outside of mainframes. And virtual servers is a way to split a physical server into smaller bits. And so this can get massive cost savings. Like if you imagine you have a physical mail server and a physical web server, you can actually combine these into two virtual servers sitting on a single physical server. And so your utilization of that physical server is then much higher, and you're getting much more value for your money, and you can reduce one of those physical servers, which saves a lot of time and maintenance. Cloud providers, this generally what they launched with. This was their core service when they first launched. They would provide the ability to spin up your own virtual server, to manage that, to shut it down when you need. You would pay for the amount of time that it was running, and they provided a number of support services around that. So you had some networking, there was perhaps some security, some storage, hard drives, things like that. These were all bundled in that package. And this was called infrastructure as a service. So when clouds first launched, they were providing infrastructure as a service. Now the cloud providers, they used their core services around virtual servers, and they evolved this and they added a platform above it. What this meant is that you now no longer needed to manage the operating system. You could deploy your software and your code into this platform, and the platform would handle things like spinning up the virtual servers, the auto-scaling between them, again, networking, security, things like that through the configuration. So this evolution was called platform as a service. You were now interacting with the platform and not directly with the infrastructure. Now, while this whole infrastructure thing was evolving over time, so too was software and the development of software and how applications run. And this is around when containers started to become popular, and especially popularized by Google with their Kubernetes offering, and Docker, which made it all much easier, much simpler to use. Now, the difference between containers and virtual servers is that virtual servers are effectively a whole server in terms of the software level. So it has operating system, it has software, everything else, and it's completely separated from the other virtual servers. But because it has operating system, that means that the time to launch a virtual server can be quite long, anywhere from 1 to 5+ minutes before it's up and ready to use. Containers are on top of the operating system. So containers don't have an operating system in them. They have software and they have code. And because of that, they can launch much faster in seconds rather than minutes. This is to some extent called container as a service, but this is really the start of where we're getting to serverless. But with containers, you still generally need to manage the underlying servers that the containers are run on. So Amazon then took this technology, this container technology, and evolved it further to be incredibly fast. So it launches in milliseconds now instead of seconds. And they use this to create a new service, and you have to have certain limits in place to guarantee that it could run this fast and how they would operate it. And effectively, you just deploy your code into it, and you configure the service to run in a certain way with your code. And everything else is fully managed by the cloud provider. And so this evolution is called function as a service. And this is really true serverless. And this is Amazon's Lambda function that was launched in 2014.